As you saw in the last exercise, you can easily create multiple columns using Bootstrap's grid system. The Bootstrap grid system allows you an easy way to create responsive layouts of all sorts of shapes and sizes. It is based on Flexbox and is created with the mobile-first approach. It's responsive and it uses a 12-column grid system. Let's go ahead and let's see how we can augment the layouts using Bootstrap's grid. Currently, I have a class of container fluid and I've added padding of 3 to the main container. In addition, I have several sections that have a class of row and I've added a margin of 4 all the way around. In order to create a layout that uses multiple columns, you'll need to add the class of call to the items. And then depending on how you want your layout to look, you're going to use a dash and you're going to specify the size that you want the layout to change. So if we use MD and we go ahead and plug in -2 and we save our page and refresh, what you're going to see is that when I resize my page and I make it wider than the specified breakpoint, my columns are going to sit side by side. The columns are only taking up 2 sections each of the 12 available sections in the grid. If we want these columns to take up more space, then what we need to do is increase this value. So if I make this 3, now they're still not going to take up all of the available space, but they are going to take up 3 grid segments each of our 12-column grid. If you're creating columns that aren't spanning the entire width of the available space, you may want to have them appear centered in the middle of the row. You can easily do that by using the Justify Content MD Center class. If we do that and we refresh our page, you'll see how this first section is going to display the articles in 3 columns and the columns will be centered. This, of course, is not going to make any difference if the columns are spanning the entire area that is available. We've already looked at how we can create a grid that will equally span the entire width. And to do this, we're going to use the call-MD4. It is possible to have the columns take up a variety of space. So if I change the first one to 2, and we'll put the middle one at 6, and we'll leave the last one at 4, this still totals 12. And if we refresh, you'll see that now the columns are going to take up different lengths of space depending on the classes that we've assigned. It is also possible when you're specifying a value for the columns to use call-auto. What this is going to do is this is going to have the column take up whatever space it needs based on the content in that column. So you can see now the first column is taking up 2 units, the third one is taking up 4 units, and the middle one is just going to take up as much space as it needs. If we go ahead and add some more text here, you'll see that that middle column is now going to grow to accommodate the amount of text. It would continue to do this until the whole grid system for this particular row maxes out, in which case then the text is going to wrap. It is worth mentioning that in order for the columns to actually function, the parent element must have a class of row, and their immediate children need to have the column class that we are going to specify. If we request columns to take up more space than is available, you will see that whatever columns exist will wrap onto the next row line. Here, I'm asking my columns to take up 6 units of the available 12-unit space. Obviously, only the first 2 are going to be able to render in this way, so then the third column is going to wrap to the second row, and the row is going to be automatically created to accommodate that. It is also common that you're going to want to change the way your layout displays based on the content that you're using. So let's change this to have column MD and I'll just plug in 4 for right now. And then I'm going to add col dash large, and I'll put dash 3. And let me change these numbers. So my second column is going to use an 8 unit for the middle column, and then we'll change the MD to 12 for the third column, and we'll leave this at 3. If we save this now and we refresh our page, if you keep an eye on the bottom section, you can see that my first column is taking up 4 units, the second column is taking up 8, and then the third one is needing to wrap onto the subsequent row, and it's taking up all 12. If we resize our screen and make it larger, you're going to see that once the breakpoint is hit, the columns are going to change. So based on what we wrote here, the first column is taking up 3 units, the second one takes up 8, and then this last one is also taking up 3. At the large breakpoint, we're not using all of the available space because these values don't add up to 12. So if I change this to 9, the middle one, you will see that this other column is just simply going to grow and take up all of the space it can. But we can easily change our layouts in this way so that we can create a more responsive look. Let's go ahead and augment this a little bit further. What I'll do is I'll create another section. And here we'll go ahead and create a 12 columns. So this one is going to be more complex. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change how the layout looks depending on the size of our screen. We'll go ahead and add a col-md-6. Then I'm going to add a second class that's going to be col-xl-4. And then finally we'll add a col-xxl-3. I'll save my page, and if we refresh this in the browser, you're going to see that at the small screen sizes, we get 1 column. Once I hit the medium breakpoint, the layout is going to change and we're going to get 2 columns. So at the mid size, the columns are taking up half of the available space. Then once we get to our large breakpoint, the columns are going to change to a 3-column layout. You can see that here they're taking up 4 units of the available space. And if we make our browser larger and increase the size, when we get to the extra large breakpoint, we actually break to a 4-column layout. So in this way, our page is very flexible. We go from 1 column to 2 columns to 3 and finally 4. You can easily create this using Bootstrap by simply adding the additional classes that you might need. If you go to the columns section of Bootstrap, this is going to give you more information on how you can align the elements. There are ways to align elements within the row if that is something that you'll need to do, and you can simply do that by adding the appropriate classes, and you can control where the columns are aligned within the parent row. If you know anything about Flexbox or Grid, the class names are reminiscent of those particular CSS properties. And if you want to know where the breakpoints are, if you click the link to read the grid page, this is going to take you back to the grid section, which we looked at in an earlier exercise, and it does specify where all of the breakpoints are going to be and what the class modifiers need to be in order to render the page in that way.